everyone. I just want to start by saying congratulations for getting into TIFF. It's a huge feat, and you should all be really proud. I missed the first portion of Peter's little chat, but you guys can let me know if there's overlap there. So what I did is I just kind of formed a list of questions that are commonly asked of me, and then if you guys, after I'm done speaking, if you have other questions, then I'm happy to field them. So Peter, I think, asked, but most of you are short filmmakers. Some of you are feature filmmakers, and most of you have been to TIFF before. Is that right? Or how many have never been to TIFF before with their film? Oh, okay. So we're split down probably half. So the first question that I get asked is, what does a publicist do? What is this whole publicity thing about? And the really simple answer to that is that we essentially act as a liaison between your film and the media at large. And Peter spoke to this a little bit, and I can't stress it enough. The most important part about being a good publicist, and at this stage in your career, you might not have the budget to hire a publicist, and we'll get to hiring a publicist in a second, but you might not have the budget, so you're kind of going the do-it-yourself route. When you're going the do-it-yourself route, it's really important to find the story, or the hook, as they call it, in terms of your film and what you're offering to the press, because they are in the business of news. So just thinking that your film is fantastic isn't always enough, especially when it's a short film and up against a lot of competition. So that the example that was brought up of the agenda change between Miller and Ford, that's a brilliant hook. It's a great example of a story. So you've got to kind of examine what your film is about. It doesn't even have to be the content of the film. Way back when I was still internal at TIFF, we had a short film. I can't remember the title now, but the filmmaker had used that short film as a project in school and had flunked. Right. But then got into TIFF. That was the story. That's a great story, right? Like dropout or film flunks and then makes it into TIFF. Well, it still made it to press. So essentially, I mean, does everyone sort of feel like they have a sense of what a publicist does in that manner? So they liaise between the two. So they would send out screeners on behalf of you. They would write and send out a press release, create your press materials like a press kit, your bios, put everything together for you so that during the festival and pre-festival, you're not busy doing all that nitty-gritty. They do it for you, and then you can enjoy your festival. You can network, and you can, do those interviews. The other question that gets asked immediately after is, can I do it myself? It's a really common one. You can do it yourself. It just takes a lot of work and legwork. I mean, one of the reasons people hire publicists is because they work with the media daily. So they know who the journalists are. They know the media. They would even maybe know whether a certain journalist would like or not like your film if they've been following the press for a long enough time. They have certain, connections and relationships that make it easier for them to do the job than you. Also, I find with a lot of artists, not just filmmakers, but artists in general, have a really hard time kind of putting themselves in the shoes of sales, because at the end of the day, a publicist is doing sales. That's what they do. They're pitching constantly. A lot of artists treat their films like they're little babies, which is totally understandable, but it's really hard for them to come and say, hey, guess what, Peter? My film is awesome. Like, it's like they can't toot their own horn in that way, or have the outside perspective to understand what would make that film sellable to a journalist. So yes, but you can do it yourself. Or you can have like a friend or volunteer or someone. You should have someone on your team sort of dedicated to that job, just because it requires so many hours and creating your list, targeting specific journalists, making sure that you get the screeners out. That said, the TIFF press office has internal publicists. And so the other question I get asked a lot is, what's the difference between the publicists that sit in the press office during TIFF and like these outside guys? So I'm an outside guy now, but I used to be inside. The difference is, so the press office is made up of, I don't know, let's say 10 to 20 publicists. I'm not sure how many they have this year. And between those 10 people, they're responsible for helping to publicize all 400 some films, and it's sort of divided up by theme. So one publicist will be responsible for all Canadian films. So they do their best that they can, but it can be a real challenge with the number of titles. And that's why a lot of features and some shorts hire on their own publicists so that the publicist can take care specifically of their one film, and then that they know that their interests are being pushed a little bit more. And that's the outside publicists also, well, we essentially do the same thing, but we'll have a smaller roster. So for instance, I'll have a roster of 5 or 10 films that I've hand selected or that have come to me, versus the publicist on the inside who's covering all the French language films, which is a huge chunk of them. So that's essentially the difference. Does that all make sense? And if anyone has questions throughout, feel free to interrupt and just raise your hands, and I'm happy to answer. Okay, so hiring a publicist. How many of you guys are considering this or are in a position to do this? A few? Okay. So how do I know, people ask me all the time, how do I know who to hire? Like, where do I find these people? How does this whole process work? I would say the best way to find a good publicist is ask around. Like, don't just do an online Google search for Toronto publicity, because you never know what you're going to get. So things that you need to look for. So when I say ask around, ask colleagues, ask other filmmakers, ask programmers, anyone that you know within the industry. Who have you worked with, or what names have you heard of, and go from there. And I always say finding a good publicist is like finding the right bra for women. It's got to be a good fit on both ends. You have to make sure that the publicist knows the landscape of the festival. So it's not a good idea to bring on a publicist that has never worked TIFF, because it's such a huge beast. So they need to know like where to go, how the whole system and machine of it works. Also, this is really important, someone that genuinely likes your work. I would be very cautious of working with a publicist that hasn't seen the film. Of course, like sometimes things are really, really last minute, and you end up like bringing on a publicist like the day before the festival starts, and that happens sometimes, but for me personally, I don't like to take on a project unless I've seen it, because then my push is more genuine. But there are publicists out there that'll just say like, yeah, great, I'll totally take you on. So be careful of that, I think. You want to make sure that they have some other films, especially if you're, let's say, a short film. You want to take on a publicist that has some titles, but not too many titles that you get lost in the shuffle, but no other titles. And the reason for that is that we can leverage some of the larger titles to try and secure coverage for some of our smaller, lower budget titles. So it's to your advantage to have someone that has a small kind of roster of films, and that's already going to be actively communicating with press pretty much daily about a number of things, and can throw you into that, into the group there. So where do you find them? Yeah, so basically just ask. Ask is the best way. And then if you can get a few names, have chats with more than one so you can find the right fit on both ends, so that you feel comfortable and then they feel like they're repping a project that they are really excited about and they believe in your work. So if you're going the do-it-yourself publicity route, which I'm guessing a lot of you are, a lot of people ask me, my God, like, where do I start? So by now, probably you guys have sent in your materials to the press office? No? Yes? How many people have sent their materials in? Okay, so some of you have yet to do it. So make sure you do. That stuff's really important, because those are the tools that the internal press office, and if you were to, when you're doing it yourself, that you would use to get the word out about your film. So screeners, and Peter mentioned this, they're really important, especially for a short film. It's just good to have them on you even, because sometimes, I mean, I've been in the past when I've pitched short films or features, and that journalist, they want to, but they cannot fit it into their schedule. And if you're the one that's like, oh, don't worry, I have this, and you can watch it on your, at your leisure in the evening or whenever you have a moment, it goes a long way. It's just there's so much competition, and it's a really intense kind of environment for them. If you can be as flexible as possible for that journalist, then that's the best route to go. So you need screeners. Your press kit, I mean, once upon a time we did like paper press kits and all that jazz, but everything's really moved to digital. Like even TIFF, everything is now just a downloadable PDF. My advice is to have a website and then have everything available on your website so that if they want high-res images, if they want the press release, if they want bios for everyone involved, all your information in one nice central place. Then ideally, you would also have like a Twitter account, maybe you have Facebook. I too am not a huge fan of Facebook, but these are free tools, why not use them? And then what happens is all the tools that you're using, they all direct back to your lovely website where all the information is. You would have a clip up there. Just make it, the idea is to make it as easy and as efficient and as fast as possible for anyone that does show interest. And this goes for the Toronto Star and the community paper or the student press. That's the other thing that's really important to remember. The mainstream media is really busy covering the mainstream films often during the festival. Of course, they do a lot of coverage or some coverage ahead of time, but a lot of people tend to ignore or forget that there's so much media out there. Why not go to the student papers? Why not go to the community radio, CKLN, CIUT? There's tons, right? And they're a lot more receptive often to smaller films, local films, Canadian films. So try to broaden your expectations and hopes in terms of the kind of coverage that you can get for your film. Photography. Photography is really important. Become really good friends with an awesome photographer just for your own career purposes, because really nice stills, I mean, not just in film, but in general, sometimes it comes down to that. When they're laying out the paper, they're like, oh, this art sucks, but this art is wicked. It can go a long way, right? And so it needs to look professional. People have even asked me, well, what makes a good press still? I don't know. Well, not your actors' headshots. That's not what I'm talking about. It needs to be an engaging, good, sharp image. And I mean, if you have questions about these types of things, start to consume the media in a more critical way or just more en masse. So if you just read the Star or if you just read the Globe, start scanning through them. Look at the images that are published in the arts section. That'll give you a good idea of the types of stuff that gets published versus not. Big group shots don't usually go to print, stuff like that. But if you're doing your own publicity, it's a good idea to get to know the media anyways, because one of the reasons I read all the dailies and I'm consuming blogs and I'm online all the time is because I have to get to know the bylines, who's writing what, where, because there's a lot of movement as well in media. What types of stuff are they covering, right? This is all information that you can sort of arm yourself with ahead of time. So what goes in a press release? Does anybody know what goes in a press release? Not so much? Okay. Silence. All right, so it's pretty basic. A press release would have, I always say the 5 W's, the who, the what, the where, the why, the when. So the basics, keep it to under a page. Try not to use fluffy adjectives and words, extra words. It's meant to be as factual and as pared down as it can get. Try not to editorialize, because that's actually the job of the journalist, right? So you got to shoot straight and give it to them this is what my film's about. This is when it's screening. Basically the top line information or that juicy hook that you have. And that's it. And then of course you have to have your contact information so that they can easily get a hold of you if they are interested. Don't send any attachments. No one does attachments anymore. And that's sort of the gist of the press release. I mean, after this chat, if people are interested, and you can feel free to email me, I can send you examples, or you can look online. The press release, people ask me, is it useful? Yes and no. I have actually found that through my career, I've been doing this for over 10 years now, we were using the press release tons in the beginning, and now I often find that the pitches that are most responded to are completely personalized, and maybe they give elements of that press release, but I don't find the press release as a tool that effective as it once was. That said, you should still have it in your arsenal. You should still use it. So I often also get asked, what are the best ways to reach out to a journalist? So first I would say that you should know which journalists to reach out to. Like, don't just blindly reach out to whoever. You could be getting like the sports editor. Like, make sure that you know who those journalists are that might even care, because journalists get a lot of emails, like hundreds a day. So you don't want to be bogging them down with something that isn't a good fit for them or doesn't make sense. So have your target list, know who you're pitching to is number one. And I would say email over phone. Now, you can always follow up with a phone call, but this is my profession, and I even have a hard time reaching journalists on the phone, just because they're filing, they're busy. I mean, I don't know. Peter, do you like the phone call or the email?
I prefer email. If you want to know something, I can do 2 phone calls a day now.
That's it. You see? Yeah. Interesting. But we have moved to a very virtual world. I mean, there are some journalists that I have a relationship with for over 8 years that I've never met face to face. But like, I feel like I know them intimately through email and through working with them. So, but yeah, maybe, I mean, it doesn't hurt to do the phone call, but just, you don't want to be harassing the journalists, the media in any way. If you're pitching to radio, you know, obviously you want to offer yourself up to studio and the community, and the student radio is best bets at this stage. Yeah, so definitely email. I've reached out to some media using Twitter, and it's worked great. So if you have an active Twitter account and you know how to do that, you know why? Because it's 140 characters, and that's what they like, fast and clean and consistent. It's a great way to communicate. So you can try that. So then the other question that people ask me is, how do I know which journalists to reach out to? So that's just a matter of kind of knowing the media landscape. If you have no idea, go to the media outlets online, read the mastheads. It's like, do a little bit of research or get someone to help you and do it, and find out who is the arts editor, who's the film critic. You know, find a few blogs. Blogs are great for being a little bit more open and accepting of smaller films, you know, without big stars and red carpets. So create your list, but you will have to do some research to do that. Then the other thing I get asked a lot about is, people say, oh, I've heard that Publicist can help get me like party tickets and on the list and exposure on other red carpets. Like, they imagine it's this really glamorous world in which we have the key to everything. So the answer to that is, sometimes we do, but it's very challenging. So any publicist that you work with or hire should have a certain amount of like connections, I guess, just because they've been working in the industry for a certain amount of time, so they know people. But it is a huge challenge. So there's a whole bunch of different things going on. First of all, the parties, there's misconceptions that all the parties are organized by TIFF. They're not. There's like 2 parties organized internally by TIFF. So all the other parties and cocktail receptions that you hear about are actually organized by external companies. So the big studios or the production companies for specific films, and those lists are controlled by those companies. So it can be a challenge to get yourself into those parties. Red carpets. I'm of the opinion that if it's not your red carpet, shouldn't really be on it. Like, even the A-list red carpets, if another A-lister decides like, oh, that's a friend of mine and I'm going to walk the carpet, which happens sometimes, it's okay, but it's not really encouraged, because the idea is that the attention is supposed to be on the talent that is in that film. So even if, you know, Robert De Niro is your best friend or whatever, and he wants to come, but he has nothing to do with the film, of course the press office will allow it, but people are like, oh, because, you know, they just don't want the attention to be directed somewhere else. So that said, in terms of getting yourselves as short filmmakers or Canadian filmmakers or independent filmmakers, really challenging to get on like in a red carpet. Not impossible, but challenging. And so yeah, so invites and that, it's a total crapshoot. And actually, I've had chats with many filmmakers who have like a really, you know, brazen personalities or whatever, and you've got the pass, and you just like make your way in there sometimes, you know? So if that's something, if that's a priority for you and you want to get into certain parties and you know about certain events, go for it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? They say no to you, you know? Act like you're supposed to be there, and maybe you are supposed to be there. I don't know, but I'm a publicist, like I'm a pusher at heart, so I get mostly everything I want. But I'm just saying that hiring a publicist, sorry? Pusher. Yeah, no, not in that way, not in that way. But what I'm trying to say is that hiring a publicist definitely doesn't guarantee you those things. But that's a question that's often posed to me. Yeah, so I also get asked, although I think this is a question that Peter can answer better than I can, but people ask all the time, like, why don't I see more coverage for Canadian film or for short films or for independent films? And I mean, he probably mentioned this in the beginning, but it's just really challenging with space. And not just space, like sometimes I have journalists say, yeah, I'm really interested, I would love this, but like my editor says, we can't. We only have this many pages, or we only have this much airtime, or, you know, there's certain editorial mandates that they can only cover XXXXX, and it doesn't include these types of films. So it can be a challenge, which is why pre-festival, you should be doing a lot of work in terms of publicity and trying to get yourself out there as much as possible, because a lot of, at least the local journalists that are here, try to give the Canadian films coverage now. So if you have screeners, you know, definitely start getting them out and pitch where you can pitch ahead of time. Because once the madness sets in of the actual festival, it's really hard to get the face time in front of the journalist, or even to catch them on email when they're buried in, you know, junket schedules and so many other things going on. You're at an advantage now because you already know, and like I say, if you know which journalists that you want to target, you should be doing it now before festival hits. So those are, as I say, some of the most common questions that are posed to me. I'm just going to like throw the floor over to you guys. If you have other questions, I'm happy to answer.
The big question that got asked before was, how much does it cost to get a publicist? I think that's what everybody wants to know.
Right, money. Okay, so this ranges across the board. There are some publicists that don't have companies, that are just like freelance publicists. Maybe they're starting out, maybe it is their first TIFF and you want to take a chance on them and they really love your project. You could probably maybe get a publicist for, on the low end, like $1,000, maybe. But I do sort of believe that you get what you pay for sometimes. So it ranges. Like I say, on the low end, $1,000. If you're getting like a friend or a student or something like that, maybe they'll do it like on a volunteer basis, just because they want the experience, they want to be part of TIFF. There's a lot of different options. I mean, Humber has a really great PR program. Maybe you want to approach them. Like, if budget is a real concern, try to go outside the box and find people that are pushers, that will bleed themselves dry to try to get your film out there. But I mean, a company will probably charge between $3,000 and $5,000 to represent your film for the festival.
And that entitles you to, I mean, the services for it are basically just for the festival, or do you pay them an amount of money and then they're the publicist for that film until it's
usually just for festival publicity, unless you negotiate something longer. I mean, so first of all, I should start by saying every company is totally different, right? These quotes are like, it's just, you know, through the years, I'm just kind of throwing out rough numbers, but you can totally negotiate to create a contract that includes post-festival, larger scope, shorter scope. Some publicists work on what we call day rates. So it's like, I just want you for this day or that day, and it's a couple $100. So the range is enormous. It really is. I know there's some companies that charge $10,000 and up to represent a film. It just depends on level of experience, I think. Yeah.
So I just have a really nitty-gritty question. We've heard a few times no attachments. So if you don't have a website, how do we send the press kit? If we're like, because I have my film on Vimeo, I can just write a short pitch and do a link to the Vimeo. Should I just leave it at that, or?
Totally. Just leave it at that. Or if you have a press release, paste it at the bottom of the email. So you can say like, hey, Peter, here's my amazing film that you need to screen for such and such a reason. Press release and more details, paste it to the bottom, like after your signature, so that if they want more information, it's there already for them, but not attached.
Okay, and the press release doesn't sound so essential. Or...
Well, I mean, why not put it in there? If you have it, put it in there so that if they have a question, like, oh, who's this person? Or, there's extra material there for them to check out, and it's already there. They don't have to send another email to you saying, okay, send me more information,
Great, thanks.
This is going to sound really shallow. Do publicists know about all the swag places?
Yes, we do. We normally do. I mean, I shouldn't say yes. It depends on what publicist you're going with and who's representing you. Like, the world of publicity in Toronto is quite small. Like, for instance, all the other boutique publicity firms that do work at TIFF, I know them all. Like, some of them are my good friends. So I know if such and such a company is hosting a swag lounge because that's my friend who's hosting it.
Yeah.
So generally, yes, more independent or freelance publicists may not know. But yeah, like, I personally think a good publicist knows mostly everything. Just
It's
saying.
just funny because I actually...
I mean, about what's going on at TIFF.
Yeah. I think when we had our first film here, it was 2004, and I let a girl budge in front of me in front of a lineup, and she turned out to be this girl who worked at the Diesel Lounge. And then for every movie that we come back with, like, we could basically get jeans for our actors and stuff like that, which really made them feel like they were having a great festival experience.
Totally.
But I never heard about this. It was only through this, like, totally random connection. So that's why I asked, like.
Yes,
It goes through you guys?
I believe a good publicist would know.
Right.
I mean, I personally know where all of that stuff is.
Right.
Just
Okay.
because those initiatives are PR initiatives, and we work in the PR industry, so we know where that's happening. Yeah. Doesn't mean we can get you into the lounge, but we do know where they are.
Oh, he can get himself.
I don't doubt it. That's great. The other thing the other thing that is challenging, I think, for filmmakers is not being so, like, needing to be confident about your project. So I find a lot of filmmakers are like, when they get asked, "What is your film about?" They'll go into this mode. It's like, this is my baby mode. Well, it's like this thing, and they have, like, really abstract descriptions for what the film is about, and it's like this. No, you need to have a really strong kind of elevator pitch, 1 or 2 lines that makes it really clear to everyone that you're talking to what your film is about, even if your film is abstract. So that's what I'm saying is you need to kind of, like, media train yourself. Because if you do happen to score the television interview or the radio interview or the print interview or any interview, you need to be able to communicate effectively what it is your product is, what your film is. So that's a challenge. So that's something, if you haven't done it already, work on that. Like, go home and think on it. So have your elevator pitch. But then I also say, in case you're in the elevator and it breaks down, be ready to have, like, a little longer conversation about your film. Like, don't just be stuck to that elevator pitch. Have a little bit more, or interesting tidbits or anecdotes, stuff that excites people in the same way that you guys brought up how your film came about. So that's really important in terms of pitching your film and being ready to pitch it, like, at all times. Because you could be at a cocktail with a sales agent or a journalist. You just never know, right? So have your business cards on you or your postcards on you. Have some material that's easy to be like, ooh, here you go at the end of it. You need to be your own pushers. Any other questions? How many of you are already working with publicists right now? Great, okay. So those of you that aren't, you can chat with the ones that do about how did you find them, how are you finding the working relationship now, because they really do become, like, a part of your team, and it needs to jive. So hopefully you noted who had, or how did you guys find your publicists? If you don't mind me asking, the ones.
Through school, we did an internship at a production company, and she was working on the film that they had in production at the time. So we kept up a relationship, did a few favors over the years, and when we had our film, approached her to see if she'd rep it.
Perfect. It is all about relationships in a way, yeah. Others? How did you guys find your publicist?
It was from someone who had a good experience with them the year before with the feature that they made, one of our producers.
Right.
So just thought that she would be great, and turns out that she's like the perfect fit for this film. So, and also I think if we looked at her stuff, like the movies that she's represented in the past are really in line with us, and she's already, like, we just met her yesterday, and she's already sort of suggesting people because of the relationships that she made on You Are Here, which she thinks is kind of similar to ours, that she can just go back to those same people again because she knows what their interests are. So it seems like it's a really good thing so far.
Perfect. Yeah, it is all about the fit, as you say. Others? It's basically like referrals mainly. Is what?
Well, I used to work as a film journalist, and I had worked with this guy from the other end, so I knew that he was good at, to me, one of the most important things was a publicist who knew what to pitch to whom, and who would be interested in what stories, and whether some people just waste their time pitching to people who never run a story like that in their publication. So he was good whenever he targeted me. So I figured he'd be good at targeting others.
It's great. Yeah, it's like hands-on experience with it. Anyone else? No. Okay. I don't know if people have other questions. I feel like I've covered. Do you guys feel like you have a good sense of how the whole publicity machine works? It is a machine. It's a beast during the festival. But don't forget about television and radio, because everyone always concentrates on print because that's like the solid review, which is great and you want, but there are so many other avenues that you could go as well. So keep open to those ideas.
You made me think of a couple of things. It's true what you say about how tough it is to get Canadian film coverage, but if you convince me, then you don't have to worry about my editor. I'll convince my editor, So if you get me to do the story, I'll take it from there, and I think that's for most people as well. But if you don't convince me, then I'm not going to convince my editor, because my editors, they look at it, it's like Brad Pitt and George Clooney and you down here, so you've got to get up there. I always answer email. I very rarely do not answer an email. It's usually because it slipped too far down the queue. I make a real point of answering email, but I very rarely answer Twitter, and my son says I'm an idiot. But I'm still having my head wrapped around these random Twitter messages where I'm thinking, am I talking to this guy or am I talking to the world? So I'm not comfortable with Twitter yet, but if you do want to get me, email's the best way to do it. And so I generally wouldn't send out to journalists by Twitter, because I still think it's kind of an evolving technology how you do it. Press releases, what I do with them, and I don't know if I'm unique this way, I kind of doubt it because we're all doing the same thing, is I have both a Gmail account and I have the Toronto Star account. Toronto Star account seems to get filled up all the time. And inevitably gets filled up like when I'm on the weekend or when I'm at my cottage or something, and then I've got to kill all this email so I can get more stuff. But Gmail goes on forever. So what I'll do is I'll send a press release if it's an important one or an interesting one. I'll send it to Gmail, and then I can search it. So yeah, send the email, send the press release, and I actually have one in Gmail. I got TIFF 11, and all the TIFF stuff I just send to Gmail because I know it's never going to fill up, and then I can search it. So I don't know if other people are doing that, but I suspect a lot of people are, because that's just the way everybody's dealing with excess of information. Pictures, good point you made about pictures. I could tell you many sad stories about people who do not get a decent play because they had a lousy picture. And I can tell you about bad movies that got great play because they had fantastic pictures. So think about that and try to make it one, maximum of 2 images. If the person wants more, you can always send more. You can FTP file, or you can have them go to a website or whatever. But pick a strong image. Don't pick something so arty that no one can say, what is that? I mean, unless if it's about poetry, though, it'd be different, right? But try to have a picture that tells your story in a unique way, and try to get a visual sense yourself. I mean, your filmmakers should already have that, right? But try to go through newspapers, magazines, TV, find out what they're using, and see if you can profit from that. I think that's it. Yeah. Thanks.